I'll be buried in my grave before I become a slave, yeah. That is what I heard them say way back in the day. I'll be buried in my grave before I become a slave, yeah, yeah. But it seems like since that day, yeah, we have sorely changed. I'll be buried in my grave before I become a slave, yeah, yeah. That is what I heard them say way back in the day. I'll be buried in my grave before I become a slave, yeah, yeah, yeah. But it seems like since that day, yeah, we have sorely changed. Whoa. Hey, hey. Whoa, oh, 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 whoa, oh, 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 oh.
And now, live from beautiful Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, you're watching My Fellow Americans with your host, Spike Cohen.
Yes. It's me. Yes. Yes. Thank you so much. Welcome to the show. Welcome to the show. Yes. Keep clapping. Clap for Shabbat. Clap for the Sabbath. How would we know it was the Sabbath if you didn't keep clapping? Welcome to my fellow Americans. I am literally Spike Cohen. Thank you for joining me on this special Sabbath episode, this wholesome Sabbath episode, this Shabbat Shalom of an episode that we're about to have on My Fellow Americans. This is a Muddied Waters Media production. Check us out on Facebook. Check us out on YouTube. Check us out on the old Instagram. Check us out on SoundCloud and on Twitter and on iTunes and Stitcher. And check us out on our website, muddiedwatersoffreedom.com. I almost forgot the website. I'd like to thank, as always, Kroger for my delicious, can you see that? Delicious, purified drinking water that I drink on this and most episodes of My Fellow Americans. Bulavanaka. The intro and outro music on this and every single episode of My Fellow Americans is from the talented Mr. Joe Davi. That is Jodavi. Check him out on Facebook. Check him out on SoundCloud. Check him out on his Bandcamp. He has a Bandcamp. And you can buy all of his music. It's going to cost you like $10. You're going to have all of his music. It's amazing. Check him out. Thank you again, Mr. Joe Davi. Shout out to Tehran Turks' mom and him, as always. Guys, my guest tonight is a complete dynamo, and I say that with the absolute least amount of hyperbole that one can reasonably use when describing another human being as a complete dynamo. She started her career in her teens. She was a part of the Rand Paul for President campaign, and she is currently a reporter who has contributed to Rare Politics and many other publications. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the show this very moment newly adopted niece, Miss Zuri Davis. Zuri, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I don't know how to feel upon the news of learning that I have a new uncle, but I'm excited that it's you and not some crazy person. So,
well, it's me, a crazy person. So it's kind of both of those things.
But there is like a bar, I guess, and like you're okay on it.
Below the threshold of what's the problem. Okay. Well, good. Well, congratulations on your new familial edition that you just found out the second.
Thank you.
And thank you again for joining. Guys, I had a hard time getting Zuri. She's a big shot. And every time I try to reach her, she's like, oh, I'm really, really busy. And so I caught her at a weak moment, and so she came on. So thank you again for joining me. And guys, if you have any questions for me or Zuri, be sure to comment and comment in there on the show, and we will let you know if you are right or wrong. Zuri, first thing I ask anyone that's on the show is how would you describe your political beliefs, and how would you say you got there? Would you say it was like kind of an aha moment, or was it sort of a gradual evolution?
Well, so right now, I say that as though it's going to change, and it's not going to.
Right.
I would like to think of myself as a very consistent person, but I identify mostly with the libertarian politics, and it wasn't always that way. I tell people that when I started in politics, I was a baby neocon. So I was really into anything on Fox News. I was really into Rush Limbaugh.
Right.
Pretty much like anyone that's kind of unbearable, I guess, today. I was really into them. Ann Coulter, all those people. I had at least 2 of her books in my bedroom growing up. I do remember that. So basically, everything kind of changed when I went to college, just like everyone else. Right. So I volunteered for Mitt Romney's political or presidential campaign, and he lost badly. And after he lost, our on-campus college Republicans didn't really have a lot of events. So I was looking for ways to be politically active. So I found our on-campus libertarian group, and they caught me in their grasp, and they slowly started feeding me libertarian propaganda. And it got to a point to where I couldn't defend my side anymore because I didn't have the facts to look it up.
Right.
Or to back it up. So
Right.
each time I looked things up, I slowly became more libertarian because it was more consistent with politics, I guess, and like how the world works. So like right now, I'm really, really, really into criminal justice reform. I think that drugs should be decriminalized at the very least. I think that mandatory minimum sentencing should go away. I don't think that people should be in prison for nonviolent drug offenses. And I remember when I first met that libertarian group, I was very much of the belief that weed was just as bad as heroin, and that if you made things illegal, people wouldn't do it anymore, which is why no one's in prison.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. But I thought if it was illegal, people wouldn't do it, and that's why no one's in prison for murder right now, because it's illegal.
Of course, because it's illegal. You know,
Yeah.
we have murder-free zones, and it doesn't happen. It's funny because I have a very similar. I think I was always in favor of legalizing drugs, but it was just because I was a drug addict. And so I wasn't consistent with that. With conservative orthodox, I was a conservative who also had a really big a substance abuse problem.
There are a lot of people who are like, they oppose legalization, but they've definitely tried marijuana in college. So, and some of them are presidents.
Yeah, I tried it every day, a lot, and so I kept trying. And so I was always that, but I was very much a neocon. I was, I think you were a bit young for this, but I was very active in supporting the Iraq War and boycotting France, because, you know, they wouldn't bomb Iraq with us. And like, I mean, I was very much into like, you know, we have to create democracy around the world and keep Israel safe from the evil Muslims. And it took, you know, being exposed to other more consistent conservatives, actual conservatives, and libertarians to really challenge that ideology. So it sounds like you kind of went through a similar thing on the college campus.
Yeah.
So so I have had the pleasure of watching you bloom from an awkward little foal into the beautiful, graceful, elegant lady stallion that I see before me today. We actually met when you were active in the Rand Paul campaign, I think. Mm-hmm. Was that sort of kind of fed into from college going straight into Rand Paul, or was there a bit of, I don't know the timeline there, did you kind of go straight from that into that?
Yeah, so I got really lucky in my libertarian transition because when that happened, that's when Rand was kind of like doing his thing in Congress, and he was like on a roll. Mm-hmm. So I know when I was in college, I think it was either like just before I started college, or like right at the beginning. He did his filibuster for privacy, and then I
Oh,
know,
yeah.
yeah. So like that was something that I admired, just because like if you put out like lofty ideas in front of me, I was really into it. But like everyone else who's kind of like a diehard for their party, I didn't really see how inconsistent the action was, I guess.
Right, right.
But and then so right after college, he had like another filibuster. So I remember like just everything he did. He was like a superstar at that time. So it was really easy to kind of keep on riding that wave because he was always up to something. And I remember I had just started getting interested in urban politics, just because I do believe that big government has harmed the Black community. I think it's been a vehicle for systemic racism.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. So it was really cool because he was the first 2016 presidential candidate to go on a speaking tour of HBCUs. He actually did his before Hillary Clinton did hers. And unlike Hillary Clinton, he actually took questions and answered them.
Right.
But that really stood out to me because I had spent a lot of time around white Republicans, and even for ideas that would benefit their party, they just kind of pretend like either Black issues don't exist or Black people don't exist. And it's always been like a weird, there's always been kind of like a thing preventing me, I guess, from fully being a Republican. And I didn't really realize it at the time when I was deeply ingrained in that stuff. But as I got older and started to care about more things, it was kind of frustrating to see that they would never really be on that level of caring about those issues. So Rand Paul really stood out to me for caring.
Well, they're kind of paternalistic, right? So like even when they are, at least it seems to me, like even when they have something that they have a message that could be very popular in, and I don't want to speak generally, you know, all Black people are going to like this, but it's something that the Black community writ large, you know, as a whole could really potentially see the good from that, you know, lower taxes or lower regulations. But the way they sort of come at the Black community and will say, you know, like, you know, get off the plantation, and like, you know, like the wording is I guess paternalistic is just the best way that I can think of it, that it comes off as this. And even the Black people often that are the ones that get knighted to do this seem to like be the worst at it. It's like, why? What was this with the Black person you chose? And not all. I mean, there are definitely some out there that are doing great things in spreading their beliefs and so forth.
But the ones who get put up on Fox News, honestly, just gonna call them out, like the Sheriff David Clarks and the Diamond and Silks of the world,
oh my gosh,
are doing nothing. Yeah, they are doing nothing to help. They have like no policy ideas. All they do is like, the feelings I have for all these people are very strong. And it's unfortunate because there are good people who who've literally dedicated years and all kinds of resources to these ideas, and they will literally never make it to that level because that's not what people want to hear. And it's unfortunate.
Because I mean, Diamond and Silk are serving a very interesting purpose, which is that, I mean, it feels like they're sort of like a cartoonish caricature of what white boomers want the Black community to be. And they want to hear them say, "Ooh, chow, I love me some Donald Trump," or like, I mean, I can't watch it. Like I've watched maybe a total of 32 seconds of Diamond and Silk spread out over maybe 15 clips. Like I watched 2 or 3 seconds. I'm like, I can't do it. I can't.
Yeah.
Do it. It's like this is a few degrees separated from, you know, Al Jolson, and he wasn't even Black. You know, it's just off of that. You know, the old Kingfish radio. I'm dating myself a lot right now. Yeah. So now I wanted to ask you. So you said you were, you know, much younger. You're in your 20s. Much younger when you were a child. a literal child, you were more of, I guess, a baby neocon like me. Are your parents conservative, or were you the Republican black sheep of the family, or how was that? What was that like?
Literally. But also,
I wasn't going to say that, but I'm just, figurative black sheep. I mean, because you're black. You said that.
I did. So when it comes to my parents, they're kind of an anomaly in many ways. And they're like, you can't really put them in a box.
Okay.
But to their credit, they are very personally conservative, but they didn't actually share their political beliefs with me. They let me figure them out on my own. And there was a time where I was way more Republican than they were. They actually were registered independents, but I guess like my upbringing, of course, and just like little things they would say, like it did kind of help shape why I gravitated towards.
Right.
Mm-hmm. But I definitely like went way further than they did. And it's funny now because like my parents are still, they're more forgiving of the Republican Party. And this is like a big thing with like, just like evangelicals, I guess. So, it's that very, we don't know Trump's heart, but we still have to pray for him. But of course, if it's like Hillary Clinton, like she doesn't get that at all.
Satan, right? Of course.
Yeah,
of course.
So my parents are, they're not as bad as some other people, and they definitely are critical thinkers. So like I would hate for someone to be like, oh, like your parents are so ignorant. Like they really aren't. They definitely do think more, and they do care about Black issues. Like my dad and I talk about James Baldwin a lot, so like they like aren't self-hating or anything like that, but I guess they just have like they're more open to that relationship, and I'm very not open to that relationship because I lived in that world, and then I lived in that world in Washington DC, and then I came out a libertarian if that says anything.
Well, you kind of went through the blender, right?
Yeah.
Isn't it sad that you have to sort of preface saying like, well, yeah, my parents are conservatives, but they don't hate themselves because they're Black. Like, it's like,
honestly, though.
No, I mean, it's not out of nowhere that you're saying that. Like, I mean, it's because there are a few.
I will. Yeah. And I used to really hate that because I used to think like, well, I do think these things like they are genuine for me, but since meeting some other people that I can see where that stereotype comes from, but also it's a stereotype, so that means it's not true for all people and not even most people. And I definitely know a lot of Black Republicans who do care about themselves and the culture, but unfortunately, a lot of the people, again, who get pushed up through the ranks and are kind of plastered on television, I've also met those people, and there are a lot of internal things that I think they should work on first.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they're not Black; they're American. Zuri, they're American.
Yeah.
This is America.
Which is funny because at the end of the day, like it just makes me think of Tim Scott on the floor talking about how even though he's a sitting senator, and most people really do, like of all the politicians, he's one you could really recognize, and he was still pulled over and treated a certain way because of his skin color regardless. So, and
it's very obvious he's Tim Scott. Like no one's like he's a very unique looking individual. There's no mistaking him for anyone else. Tim Scott was, I believe, the last Republican I voted for.
Oh, wow.
Interesting factoid, everyone, because I'm from South Carolina.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Interesting factoid. Tim Scott, last. Because, because of 2014. And I didn't vote for most of them. And I voted for Tim Scott because just because I knew how many people that would rile up. And so I voted for him. And for some reason, Lindsey Graham was also on that. I'm not sure why both senators were on that ballot in 2014, but they were. I think Tim Scott was, it was because he was specially appointed, but he had to be put on the ballot or something. Anyway, and I put one of my dogs. I wrote him in for Lindsey's seat. We lost that election in the recount. But yeah, so that's last Republican that I voted for, Tim Scott.
I think the last Republican I voted for was Rand in the primary, and then I voted for Gary Johnson. And then I still like had my Florida ballot. So this is like really bad of me because I didn't change it over.
Right.
And then I voted like all libertarians. I think I forget like which big seat was up, but yeah, I wasn't really. Oh, I know it was like an attorney general thing.
Oh, okay.
Pretty sure like Pam Bondi was like on the list or something. So it's like, what is the next choice?
Yeah.
So,
Not Pam Bondi. Yeah.
yeah.
That's funny. So with the so you got on the Rand Paul campaign. That was when I met. No, so right before that. So around the time I met you, I think right after I met you, you were briefly in the news, and it was because you were being harassed over the fact that you were a woman and a black woman who was supporting Rand, who's obviously a Republican. And I don't remember what was that like? Were you actually like cyberbullied over that? Like, what was that all about? I don't even remember now.
One, I just want to say that's such a giant throwback because it feels like it happened forever ago now.
No, it feels like a decade ago. It was like,
yeah. But so basically, I was really into Rand. Like you can just kind of see like my pictures from 2014 and 2015
with Rand shirts. Yeah.
Oh yeah, like he was all over my Facebook.
Nope.
But someone's like mutual friend, or I like had a mutual friend with the person who took issue with it, but I didn't actually know them at all. So our mutual friend screenshot what he said, and he was just like, "Oh, like don't you know that Rand is like a racist and a sexist?" And it made me mad because I can honestly say that Rand Paul is the only Republican that I've ever like voted for that I know that I did my research before deciding that I wanted to support him. Right. And like I had all of these different facts about the things that he had said and what he had done, and like the things that he stood for and voted for in Congress that went into my decision. And I was mad that it was reduced down to gender and race, because it wasn't like
he's
that
a Republican.
Yeah.
Like,
it made me feel like all of my research was invalidated, and I was very prideful about that. So I wrote a response back saying, well, I care because, you know, I care about the Black community.
Right.
I care about privacy. Here's how he stood up for all of those things. And it just kind of took off, and it helped my career take off, which is really nice. I do appreciate that. So thank you, everyone who shared that article. 'Cause now I can pay rent and pay for food for my dog. But
oh, that's right. You have a dog. That's right.
Mm-hmm. His name is Bishop.
Bishop. Yes. Yeah. I was like, it's something to do with Vatican hierarchy.
You know what's funny? So I actually settled on that name before I decided to convert to Catholicism. Fun fact about me, if you don't know. But
so that was. I assumed that it was, you know, like I'm so Catholic, I'm naming my dog after Catholicism, but it was actually the opposite.
Yeah. So I'm like really into. I definitely idolize certain parts of Southern culture, and I really like the like Wild West like religious aspect. So like I love when TV shows have characters and their names are like Deacon or Booker or things like that. Right. So I was like going off of that, and I named him Bishop. And there's actually a guy, well, I live in Nashville now, and there's a guy that I met who was kind of from East Tennessee, and he told me it was a good name for a Southern Black man. And I was happy because that's exactly what I was going for.
You wanted to give him the persona of a Southern Black man.
Yeah.
So like, will your next dog be like Shoemaker, and like, you know, like you'll have all the different Wild West names? I'm
gonna try. I'm gonna see. Like I want, if you think about my dog, like I want you to think about like some like a granddad sipping iced tea on his porch or something. So
that's exactly what I got from that, by the way. Not Catholicism. I'm gonna have to retool how I've been thinking of your dog all this time. I was really like thinking like heavily like that he would come in with the incense or the whatever that they have when they walk down the aisle. This is how much I know about Catholicism. Is that the incense? I'm sure that's what the bishop does. Here comes the bishop with the incense.
Kind of. It's like more like the altar boys do it, but I think the bishop like holds it for a second. I don't know. It's like confusing because the bishop worships in his own spot. And I don't always go to like the cathedral because I have my own parish. So it's a lot. It's a lot of stuff to learn. But it's been really fun so far.
Now, have you, I mean, it's Christianity, so it's not like you've converted to Hinduism or something, but did you have any, like, within your family or loved ones, was there any pause or backlash or anything when you said you did that, or?
Oh, goodness. So my mom, let me tell you, so my mom used to be Catholic, and then she stopped, which, like, is fine because, like, I do understand why she transitioned. When she was growing up, she had a lot of questions, and she didn't have good educators. So by the time she met my dad and they became Church of Christ, just like another type of Christian, when she asked questions, people actually had answers for her. And that just kind of goes to show the importance of, you know, if someone asks you something and you're supposed to be a religious leader, like, you should be well studied enough to answer those important questions. And
really anything in general. If someone asks you something and you want them to join or remain a part of your thing and you just don't answer, it's not good. A good idea. You really should answer them.
Oh, yes. I 100% agree. But because of that, a lot of people have used, like, her conversion against me. So, like, they don't really know that that's why she converted. But some people will be like, oh, well, I just hope you see the truth like your mom did. And it's like, well, I did see the truth, and now I am where I am. So, like, let's try another tactic, I guess. But it's been a bit of a shock. But even though for my dad, especially because he grew up Church of Christ and his dad and all of that, it's been a shock for him, but he's been really good about being respectful about it. And then now we're having different conversations, and, like, I grew up the way that he did, so there are things about the Catholic Church that he didn't understand, and it's been really nice to be able to show him, like, oh, hey, like, here are the actual beliefs, like, you know, like, we don't worship Mary, like, we don't believe like half of the misconceptions that are out there, but it's been pretty fun so far.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm Jewish, so maybe I'm not getting it, but I to me, it's like, I know that there are major foundational differences between Catholicism and the Protestant and evangelical religions, and, you know, the non-Catholicism and non-Catholicism, there's some large schisms there, and I get that, but it's still Christianity. Like, it's not like you went home and said, I worship Satan now, like, you know, like, you know, it's, but I get, when it's your kid, and I get it. So pivoting back to Rand Paul, speaking of Catholicism, Rand Paul,
wait, I'm like, okay, not confirmed. I'm gonna have to ask him. I'm like a good 85% convinced that, like, one of his brothers is Catholic, because every time I talk about the church, he always comments about, like, his parish or something. And I'm just like, you're Catholic? Like, that's so awesome.
Well, maybe there are the Pauls Catholic, maybe? I don't.
So I know when I used to Google them for funsies.
Nice cyber stalk the Paul family.
Yeah. So I'm pretty sure, I feel like they aren't Catholic. Don't quote me on this. Okay. You should definitely, like, ask them. But I feel like talking. I, like, briefly remember the mention of, like, some sort of Christian, like, religious activity. I'm just not sure on what that is, but I don't necessarily think that they're Catholic. But I feel like maybe one of his brothers is. So if he would like to confirm that, that'd be cool. And
yeah, he's coy about it. Apparently, he doesn't say. He doesn't say what he is. How about that? That's a factoid. There's been a factoid heavy show. So when you were volunteering with the Rand Paul campaign, I remember you would put out some, like, skits and things like that, and you routinely invited me to every Rand Paul event in the entire
I
48,
am
lower
so
48.
sorry.
But, no, I was fine with it because
Wow.
I also get invited to a lot of things everywhere. But it was like, come meet Rand in Oregon. I'm like, I'll see what I can do. Like, I'll try. I'll do my best. There was something that he did, I think, in Charleston that I tried to get to and wasn't able to do it. But yeah, the Oregon stuff, I'm like, I don't know what's happening next week. Maybe I'll be in Oregon. Who knows?
Oh yeah, just cash.
Yeah, you could Uber it. So I remember you did the skit. You did one where you were Marco Rubio's secretary, and you were explaining why no one could reach him ever or something like that. That he was busy. Do you remember that?
Yes.
Because he like never voted or something like that.
It popped up in my memories like a few weeks ago.
Oh, really?
Yeah. That was an interesting time. I mean, I still believe that, by the way. I feel like if you get paid the amount of money that you do, you don't even have to vote, but like at least pretend like you're kind of showing
Like you're
up.
gonna be there, right?
Yeah.
I remember, and it was like Marco Rubio's office. Oh no, sorry, he's really busy, and you were like playing on your phone or something like that, and it was funny. So then, and again, I don't know obviously don't know your timeline as well as you do. Did you then get into doing the reporting and stuff like that, or was it kind of a seamless thing from one to the other? Or were you already doing that when you were with the Paul campaign?
So when I did that, I still worked for Rare, but I worked in like a different capacity. So I had more of an assistant role as an editorial assistant. And it wasn't, I can't really say if it was like around that time or like just after, but then I transitioned into more like a full-time writing role. So I was a media writer there. So pretty much any like big speech, the debates, God bless. I hate debates so much now.
Well, especially after those ones, because that was a nightmare from hell. There wasn't a lot being learned at those debates.
Oh my gosh. Like, I remember, so I did like a huge Facebook cleanup because I was like I was disappointed. I'm disappointed in myself now for being so invested in politics at that level. Because at the end of the day, you can't change anything. And like, there's no point in being that angry. But I remember something from the debates, and like everyone's introduction was how they randomly had like a connection to Ronald Reagan. And it's like, okay, that's not a policy point, but okay. Like, I'm pretty sure one of them was, I met Reagan when I was a little boy, therefore I'm the most Republican person on this stage. And it's like, oh God.
It's like, who got to touch King Arthur before he died or something like that.
Yeah.
No, I remember the worst part with the debate that I remember that wasn't something Trump did was they were asking each of the candidates what they thought their weakness was. And and Trump, of all things, Trump actually gave a pretty like non-political answer. He was like, my wife says that I take things too personally or something like that. And I'm like, that was an actually surprisingly introspective answer that I didn't expect from you in this moment of all moments. Very weird. I was like, this is a very human moment from you of all time. And Rand, because he wasn't getting a lot of time, he said, I'm not going to answer that. And he started talking about whatever he wanted to talk about. But Ted Cruz, our good friend, great beard he has now, by the way.
I don't want to compliment it because
no, I know. It's one of those things where it's like, damn it, that
on
beard. I hate that beard looks as good as it does. Like, I don't.
But like, I will say, like, it's nice that he has like the salt and pepper thing going on because, like, I will compliment the color, but not the shape.
Because you have principles.
Yes.
You're not a a political crony.
Yeah.
I'll just the coloring is nice, Ted. What I like is that he started growing it as he started randomly telling people that he does occasionally smoke weed. And I was like, who is this? This is how you celebrate beating Beto O'Rourke, as you're gonna grow your beard out and talk about getting high. But his answer.
Anymore.
What's that?
No, yeah. I was gonna say he can't be cool anymore. After he said he doesn't listen to rock and roll after 9/11 because that makes
Oh God,
sense.
I forgot about that.
Yes, that.
Oh yeah, he
is
started listening
randomly
to
in my
country
mind.
music. He started listening to country music after 9/11 because that's a natural reaction to that.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yes.
But his answer to what is your greatest weakness was like, I fight too hard. I
I
care
care too
too
much.
much. I care too much. I was like, you made
Oh
Trump
man.
look better by like Trump, who gave a legit answer, and everyone else who's pandering like, "Oh, I care so much," and Rand, who was like, "I refuse to answer that because you're not giving me time to actually talk about things that matter," which in his defense was true.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was a fun thing, but yeah. So I completely lost my train of thought.
I don't even know. Oh, the debates. Okay,
The debates.
so
Go ahead.
we were
Sorry.
talking about my like writing timeline.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's all I had to say about the time. I started writing either right at that moment or like just after. But unfortunately, that meant I had to watch every single debate, and I hated it. Now it actually makes me really not like the Democrats because they've already started to like announce like some of their debates, and I think they're gonna have like 20 something, like some outrageous number of like forums. Just like, okay, I already don't like you guys because this is too much.
They're gonna make Trump win
Yeah.
because there's 50 of them, and they're all gonna compete for who's the most womanly woman of color. And in like a real pandery way, and half of them are going to be white, but they're going to still have to do it because you got to do it now. And they're going to rip each other to shreds. And then Joe Biden's going to get the nomination because the not Joe Biden, sort of in the same way that Trump won, because for so long the non-Trump vote got split up so much until finally he was just the foregone conclusion. Joe Biden, who's far more likable in the Democratic Party than Trump was in the Republican Party at that time, is going to get the nomination, and Democrats are going to lose their freaking minds because Joe Uncle Touchy just won the nomination after they spent a year and a half talking about how intersectional their candidate needed to be, in, like you said, probably 30 debates, which will be increasingly terrible and shrill. So you'll have a lot to write about, at least.
Yeah, I'm just like, if Jim Webb wants to jump in at this point, like, that would make things more bearable. Of course, he'd probably drop out again after a few weeks, which is unfortunate. And I can't really blame him for that because you could kind of tell where things were going. Like you could tell that Hillary was going to be the nominee, which is unfortunate to have things decided like that so early. But yeah, I feel like if he wanted to jump in, that would make 2020 like bearable.
Just the year in general. We actually talked about that on the show, Matt and I, that, you know, like, I'm an anarchist. I don't vote. If I voted, it would be for like Vermin Supreme or like like a joke vote, or actually I shouldn't call him a joke vote because I would actually enjoy him being president. But you know, like I think of I can see someone who is defensively voting, however you call it. I could see someone saying, "Man, if my choices are Jim Webb and Trump, I'm jumping all over the Jim Webb train." Like in a Texas second. And we were talking about that on the show, but the problem is he doesn't meet the Democratic narrative of what they want. Just in identity, before you even get into his, moderate, conservative leaning in some ways, libertarian leaning in some ways, progressive leaning in some way. He's not what Democrats want. They want to fall in love with a hardcore intersectional feminist progressive, and have Joe Biden win anyway, get the nomination anyway. So that'll be interesting to watch. So with your writing, what are the things that you like to write about the most? Obviously, besides like, when you're picking out a news piece, what would you say are the things that like really stick out to you that you like to write about the most?
So my favorite are anytime there's like a story, like a human story that can be talked about. I really like that. I think a lot of times, Republicans and Democrats and libertarians too, they have political beliefs. They support certain kinds of legislation. They support politicians. But at the end of the day, it really is about how it affects the American people.
Right.
So people can say that they support X policy out of like goodwill. But if it actively harms someone, I like to kind of show how, because this thing was passed however many years ago, this person's life is now affected by it.
Right.
And I will say a lot of that comes out in the criminal justice system.
Yeah.
So those are my favorite stories to write, criminal justice stories and prison stories. So I was actually just thinking about this the other day, and the story that I'm most proud of that I've recently written is about a man who was on death row, and he was executed a few months ago in Texas. But basically, the victim's family advocated for him to receive clemency, to get life in prison, because they let me just like go back in the story. So basically, about 15 years ago, he shot and killed a store clerk in an attempted robbery.
Okay.
And that store clerk had a son. So when the son grew up, he fully anticipated that he would sit kind of front row and center at his execution.
Right.
But basically, a filmmaker had gotten in touch with the man on death row, and he did these series of videos about how he had changed his life around, how he was mentoring younger people who were at risk to show them that that wasn't the path that they wanted to go down.
Right.
And how he had made all these changes. And the store clerk's son saw that, and it touched something inside of him and made him realize that he didn't want the death row inmate's daughter to go through the same pain of losing a father. And he saw that because he was penitent about his crimes and was trying to help other people, that made him change his mind about his execution. And unfortunately, he wasn't granted that clemency, and he died anyway. But that was such an interesting story about the death penalty. And even though these two families experienced a serious loss, they still came together, I guess, for the sake of this man's life. And that was really interesting.
Well, and it is very interesting, and the interesting part of the interesting thing about that with the death penalty is that ostensibly the main, besides obviously punishing someone for the the murder or murders, however many murders they've done, and also for making sure that they never harm anyone like that again. There's also the punitive aspect, but in addition to that, part of the reason for doing that, as opposed to life in prison without parole, is to give a sense of justice and finality and to some extent revenge to the survivors and loved ones of the person or people that were killed. So when you have a situation...
Sorry. I was trying to hold it in and it came out.
It's okay. It's all right. These are natural things. Like, it's natural.
In like the middle of such a great point too. I'm so sorry.
No, it's okay, because I can edit that out. I think I can edit that out, or I can leave it in. Whatever.
Whichever, totally fine.
I'm gonna leave it in. Screw it. But yeah. So in this case, you've got the loved one who is saying, "No, I don't want this to happen. I'd rather they spend life in prison or not be executed," and they do it anyway. And it's that's the state is in charge there. The person is property of the state, which there's a whole subject there. And they can do what they want with the person. So something you had written about. Oh, by the way, I need to bring up something. Shout out to Muddied Waters Media. You were very briefly the editor-in-chief of the Muddied Waters. And when I say very briefly, I mean a matter of hours, basically. So tell us how that went. Tell us about your career with Muddied Waters Media.
I was gonna say, so it's actually a really good like plug for Muddied Waters, I
Yes.
feel. The girl who did it before me also did it essentially
Yep.
for what felt like a matter of
A
hours.
few minutes. Yeah. Yep.
And then we both got really amazing jobs.
Yeah.
So the thinking is if you become the editor in chief, then you'll get like a really amazing job really quickly.
Yeah. So this is really, if you want to be if you want a fast track into the world of libertarian politics, in any capacity, an unpaid internship with Muddy, and we'll give you a title and everything, like the president of the whatever you want to be called, we will call you that. And right around the time that we're like, hey, so what we need you to do, that's pretty much as soon as we ask you to do anything, that's when you'll be like, sorry, I just got a really good job in several states away. It's like, oh, okay, well, we understand. And at this point, it's not even the several states away because I'm several states away. It's just the inability to do the thing because you have a job now. If you don't have a job, any libertarians without jobs, if there is even such a thing, if there are any libertarians...
There is such a thing.
I didn't say that. But if there are any libertarians out there that want a job, we can give you an unpaid one for about 50 seconds, and then you'll get a really great job somewhere else. Pretty much as soon as we need you for anything. Not bitter at all. No, that's good. So you've got your thing now. You don't need us anymore. And so you wrote a story. I think it's your most recent story that you wrote about the Groveland Four, and I don't think I've ever heard this story. And if I have, I mixed it with other similar stories and it didn't stick out. But basically, and I'm going to let you talk mostly about it, but the newly crowned?
Pardon?
I don't know. No. The governor. The newly governorized governor of Florida.
Definitely.
What's that?
Governorized.
He was governorized. He was straight up governorized. The new governor, he's not the governor elect anymore because he was elected. I don't know why the governor of Florida, who is now governor. I don't know why this is. I have a hang up on just saying that he's the governor of Florida, Ron DeSantis. He posthumously pardoned the Groveland Four, and this story. When I read it, it was absolutely insane. I read your story. Tell us a little bit about this, and we can delve into how this talks exactly about why policy matters.
Yes. So basically, I guess it was in the 50s. The dates sometimes I'm like not the best on, but I think around the 50s, a white woman.
The alleged event was in 1949. So
okay, so in the 40s, but basically a white woman in Central Florida accused 4 Black men of raping her, and before any due process could be carried out, which we have about 2 amendments regarding that in our Constitution.
From the beginning, we've had those amendments, yeah.
Yeah, so obviously those things didn't apply because they were Black men in the South.
Yeah.
So basically, the fallout was such a miscarriage of justice. Like, you shouldn't be surprised because, like, we have heard stories like that, but
right.
It's still kind of surprising to hear how far it went.
Even to know the types of things that happen, how crazy this was. It was like several magnitudes higher than what I would have even expected in the South back then.
Yeah. So basically, 2 of the men, or 3 of the men, wow, details today. 3 of the men were imprisoned. One of them kind of ran away, but basically a mob of several hundred men caught up to him, and he was shot about 400 times because they found him like sleeping under a tree. For the other 3 men, 2 of them got their cases reheard because Thurgood Marshall, while he was with the NAACP and before he became a Supreme Court justice, he heard of their cases and then appealed for them to get new cases because there was no evidence really. presented at their first case. And of course, they were tried by an all-white jury. So,
Right. And there
some
was
bias
no
there.
evidence, right?
Yeah. So the prosecutors didn't present any DNA linking them to the crime. They didn't present the medical findings of the alleged victim at the time. And it later was suggested that the prosecutors kind of hid, the facts that a rape didn't actually occur. So while these two of the three men were on their way to their new trial, the sheriff of the town actually shot them.
Yep.
And he said that they tried to escape. One of them died, but one of them survived. And he told an FBI informant that, no, we were not trying to escape. This was completely unprovoked. And even though the FBI informant testified on their behalf that had happened, nothing happened to the sheriff. And he was actually reelected several times. So basically, two of the men were still alive at a certain point, and they I can't speak today. They eventually were released from prison. One of the men, he actually died in 2012.
Yeah.
But the other guy, the one who was shot by the officer, he was found dead in his car kind of just after being released. Also, in response to the alleged rape, a group of white residents went to a black town and they burned everything. They shot guns in the homes of people. And it's just crazy to think about, because the town where everything happened, it is just north of where my grandparents live, where my dad was raised. And they lived in Florida for a very long time. And it's really, to read something like that and to think back on some of the things that they told me about their lives, like, it's really crazy to think that they experienced that and like they saw that so close to them. And like, I can understand better now, like when my grandparents have hesitancies about things, or they worry that their stuff is going to be taken, or things like that, like
things that we think are absolutely ridiculous that they're thinking that, but they remember. It wasn't like, oh, this happened to my parents. It happened to them as adults, and they're having to adjust to this reality, and we're all like walking around on our iPhones like, like whatever. And then I don't have an iPhone, I have an Android, but that we're all walking around like so detached from these things. And then when someone will, like you said, they'll verbalize a fear of something, and we're like, that'll never happen. It's like, that happened literally right here, not that long ago, right? Yeah. It's crazy.
So it was like the case was like obviously completely ridiculous, and there's no justice for these people. There's no evidence. Obviously, there's a lot of bias in their trial, and there's prosecutorial misconduct, which, fun fact, still happens today. And I am actually working on a story about that right now. And I don't want to like spoil it because like it's a longer piece, but I am very excited about it. But basically, the alleged victim's family, they actually they were against the pardons because the woman she's still alive, and she was still very adamant about her story. But one of the women who's related to one of the black guys said that while she was a teacher, she actually came across a story written by one of her family members, and the family member essentially said, we were told to be quiet about this. And like, I'm not completely
that
sure.
It was made up and to be quiet.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow.
I'm not completely sure. Like, she didn't present like the letter or anything, but it just wouldn't surprise me, I guess.
So
that was the thing.
So the woman that claims she was raped, so she's still alive. She's still saying she was raped.
Yeah. And now
that it was them that did.
Yeah. And it's actually really funny well, it's not funny, but it's interesting to think about, because her family still believes her, even though historians have gone back and they've looked at all the documents and evidence and all of that, and they've concluded that nothing happened in that area. My sister still actually lives there. And like she's always telling me about stuff that goes on and how different it is from the place where we grew up, which we grew up in South Florida. It's very, very mixed down there. Like you have all kinds of cultures. That's not to say racism doesn't exist down there, but
Right.
it's more of a melting pot than like America as a whole is a melting pot.
Right.
And I say that to mean a lot of times, even if like Black people and white people and Hispanics, Asians, all those people, even if they live together, they keep to their own separate corners kind of. But in South Florida, people are pretty like mixed in down there. So like you really do actually interact with people of other races and ethnicities. But it's just interesting that, you know, they're still holding on to that idea of this woman was wronged. And even in death, those men can't have justice because it's her word against theirs.
And here's the thing with that. Like, okay, let's for a moment assume, take her at her word that this happened and that one or more of them were responsible for it. If you don't have any evidence, and you know, this is like talking about the Kavanaugh thing that Matt and I had to talk about for about a month and a half, like 6 episodes straight, where we just kept saying the same thing. If you don't have, especially in a trial, it's one thing about public opinion. If you are in a trial and have zero evidence that something happened, that's the end of it. Like it's unfortunate. Again, assuming that she, you know, wasn't that she, everything she's saying is true and that they absolutely did it. If you don't have evidence, and there's a reason for that, because you could just say someone did something and that would be enough for them to get in trouble for it. So I mean, at the very least, there wasn't enough evidence to actually convict them. And so that's at best. And at worst, she was making it up or embellishing, or the police leaned on her to say it was these people or whatever. But I mean, that's not enough to do that. And then, like you said, it then sprung out into where they're attacking, you know, an entire city full of people and, you know, ransacking a city, razing a city because they're angry that, you know, 4 Black men may have done something.
Yeah.
And it just shows like how resentful of just the fact that, I mean, ultimately it came down to they were resentful of the fact that Black people were living free near them.
Yeah.
And this sort of this was enough for them. Is that Bishop?
It is.
Hi, Bishop.
Gosh, I like felt something on my back. But
I'm very dog oriented. I'm like, is that a dog?
yes, this is Bishop.
Hi, Bishop.
I don't know if you can see it or not, but I got him a St. Francis medal. So if he ever goes missing, I know that St. Francis will be interceding on his behalf and watching over my dog's safety.
That is the most adorable Catholic dog story I've ever heard.
Yeah,
I've heard many, as you can imagine.
Oh, yeah.
Thousands. That goes into the panoply of dog Catholicism that I know and love. But yeah, so I mean, it's crazy how the fact that they were just resentful of the fact that Black people were being free. Just this one thing was enough to turn into like a small race war. So I mean, it's great that we've come as far as we have. But it was really good that I mean, it's obviously you can't take back what happened, but it's good that now, at least officially on the record, you know, these people are innocent, and that the state is acknowledging that.
Yeah.
I wanted to get your thoughts on something, if you have the time for it.
Yes.
Okay, good. I didn't know if you're gonna have to take Bishop out or something.
Oh no, he's just
okay.
like laying down.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's like Axel. He's very chill.
Yeah.
Axel is somewhere here, I'm sure.
I would not say he was chill though. I think he's chill right now, but he's definitely a giant puppy. So
How old is he?
he's a year and a half
Oh,
about.
wow.
So yeah.
Oh, so he's young.
Mm-hmm.
My glasses are...
They're crooked again.
They're crooked again. They keep doing... It's like, oh, how old is your dog? That's awesome. Tell me more about your dog's age. So Axel just had his 10-year anniversary of when we adopted him.
That's awesome.
And he was a full-ass grown dog when we got him. So he's probably 13, 14 years old. He's an old man. He's our old man.
Oh.
Yeah. He's not cute anymore. But
I've definitely seen pictures of him. He's beautiful.
oh, he's beautiful, but he's not cute.
No.
There's beautiful and then there's cute. But so we were fostering a puppy for a long time. She's gone now. And she'll still come and visit, but she's not here. And he has had full on temper tantrums a few times because he wants his puppy back, and he keeps pulling the cushions off the furniture and just looking at me like, "Where's the puppy?" And I was like,
That's really sad. Like,
yeah, no, he's really like having he's a bit bitter about it, and he'll go by where her crate used to be and just look at me like, it's like, look, the puppy will come when the puppy comes. Don't stop, like, leave the couch alone. So I wanted to get your opinion about this. Speaking of couches, this has nothing to do with couches. So you have, I know you participated in women's marches and got a tremendous amount of flack for describing yourself as a feminist, like a lot of flack. And I just wanted, so what does feminism mean to you?
Okay. I mean, it's going to sound really basic, but it really is the idea that women are equal to men. And I will say that I think it surprises people, obviously, because I'm not a Democrat or a progressive at all.
Right.
But I do identify as a libertarian. And then, like, personally, I'm very conservative. And obviously now, like, I'm Catholic, and I feel like if you think about Catholicism, like, you really kind of think that it's like the opposite of feminism. But I've been lucky to find a lot of women who think similarly to me. So over time, I've met a lot of pro-life feminists and Catholic feminists, and where one place where we really differ from more progressive women, no offense, is that we think that feminism is more of like a social thing, and like progressive feminists do think it's social, but they also are really big into policy, and I don't think that policy is going to fix things, and I don't think that policy is always necessarily the problem. So for example, I think a big feminist victory is teaching women how to ask for raises. I don't believe that let me backtrack. I believe that some of the economics that go into things like the wage gap are a little bit, they are misinformed a little bit. And I do believe that there are some problems, I guess, with like inequality in the workplace. And I've definitely had that experience of, I've said something, a guy will come after me, say the same thing, and he'll get the praise for the idea. But
that's genius. Why did no one else say that?
Right, yeah. But in terms of like maliciousness from the employers on that behalf, I think a lot of times it is like a bit of a social thing. So women were very sorry, Bishop, come here. He's like messing with the lamp, and like it's making the room go wonky.
He's like, yeah, tell him about feminism.
Yeah, right. He's very interested in this topic. But yeah, so women, we care, we take feelings more into account of other people. So we're less likely to like push hard for something that we believe in. And we can tend to be more passive. So we think that if we come to work, we do all the right things, someone will notice our success. And that's how raises go. But a lot of times,
and it's not, yeah,
especially if you're dealing, like if your boss is a man, men don't work that way. You do have to be very direct with them. So I have actually sat in on conservative feminist groups where the speaker sat and taught us how to ask for a raise. And I think that that's a feminist victory.
That's great. Yeah. I mean, there's, someone might laugh at that, but that's a good thing because there are, and you can blame it on genetics, you can blame it on physiology, you can blame it on conditioning, or you can say it's a combination of the two, but there is, generally speaking, not always, not all. Yeah. Hashtag not all. But generally speaking, women tend to be more agreeable and accommodating. There's less variation. I'm going to start sounding like Jordan Peterson. There's not as much variability in their moods, so that they tend to have a more stable range of moods than a man who could be all over the place, and they tend to be less direct and try to find more agreeable ways to say things, which are good and applicable in some things, but for specifically saying I need more money from you, that's not more often than not, that's not a good way to try to do it, is to be as agreeable as possible. So to have someone actually structurally break down how to do that is, like you said, that's a big feminist victory.
Yeah. So for me personally, I define my feminism a lot through things like mentorship like that. So I think just giving other women, especially younger women, just like a place where they can come and they can talk, and older women can share their experiences. I think that's important, because I feel like a lot of girls especially kind of get the short end of the stick sometimes when it comes to education. And I don't mean like K-12 education. I just mean like education about like, here's how the world works, but also like, here's how to get over these barriers, and here's how to work with different kinds of people. And I feel like guys don't really get that education either, but it's easier for them when there are more men to be around, because they just kind of know. But like, if you're a woman like me, who the only man in my house is my dad, it was like all girls essentially, like that's not something that I would just naturally know how to do. And it's been really helpful to have women mentors show me different ways to get over those things.
That's really good. That's really good. I need to get this thing and plug it into the computer so that this can continue. If it doesn't, everything's going to get shut off immediately. So now you get to watch me wobble out of this chair. Yeah, so people, when they see me try to get out of a chair, they assume it's because of MS that I get out like a 95-year-old man who has problems. It actually has nothing to do with that. It is because I back problems, and I have hold on one second. I have all sorts of back issues, and hurt too. And I also have a tailbone injury that flares up occasionally.
Okay.
This is peak Judaism, by the way, when you're talking about my ailments. And I can't even hear your response because I don't have my headphone on. I'm just talking to myself about how my back hurts. This is really kind of the epicenter of you. You're Jewish when you talk to yourself. I can hear you now. I when you just talk to yourself about like, oh, my back. Ah.
I'm crying. Also, there's actually, so they market it for pregnant women, but I'm pretty sure it's for like other like types of people too.
Like Jews?
Basically, it's something you can put in your chair, like curves out. I don't know if I'm making a curve. I feel like I'm not, whatever. So basically curves out, and it has like kind of a spring in it. So you like put it in your chair, and then you sit against it, and then when you stand up, it'll kind of like help push you out of the chair a little bit. So yeah.
Oh, that's smart.
Mm-hmm.
Because I have a thing that I sometimes sit in a car for my tailbone.
Mm-hmm.
But just in this chair, I'm like, screw it. I'm a man. I can sit in this chair for 2 hours. I'm not. And I get out and I'm like, I'm leaving all this in, by the way.
You should definitely have like a pillow, by the way. I have injured my tailbone before as a kid, and like that pillow saved my life. It
takes forever.
Yeah.
Because you have to sit on your tailbone.
Yeah. So
and people are, hey, stay off your tailbone. Okay.
Yeah.
I won't lie down or sit for the next several months.
Yeah.
And also I have MS, so I'll just stand here with MS for 6 months.
Yeah.
Good talk, Doc. I'm leaving all this in. No editing at all.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's taken care of. So now that this can continue. So yes, so we've established that I'm Jewish, and
have
like
a
people.
tailbone injury.
What's that?
And you have a tailbone injury.
A Jew with a tailbone injury walks into a bar with a black Catholic, and I think you know where that's going, huh? we said there's the one of my Gentile jokes, which that rat bastard Jerry Seinfeld stole from me. Apparently, Matt let me know that Jerry Seinfeld's been stealing my jokes, and one of them is that one of my many Gentile jokes, which is Gentile says to another Gentile, "Hey, how's your health?" And the other Gentile says, "Great." So
Like, wow. Okay.
So, speaking of feminism, speaking of feminism, this is good. No, this is how these are. Every one of my shows is like this. Gillette. I don't know if you heard this, Zuri, but
they're in the news. What?
Yeah, Gillette. I know, really, right? Like, you mean the razor company? So fresh on the heels of Nike. What was that? There we go. Nike showing how woke they are by selling shoes after showing Colin Kaepernick for 40 seconds. Gillette put out an ad that was so Matt and I talked about this. In my opinion, I'd like to get your opinion. But in my opinion, it was a bunch of truisms mostly. It was like, you shouldn't beat up people, and it's not, a good man will stop bullying, and a good man won't pretend that he's attacking a woman, and he'll because Zuri, boys become men and they're seeing that stuff, and by golly, you need to show them the good stuff, not the bad stuff. And because this is America, everyone had a very measured and nuanced response to this ad. And I don't think I saw anyone burn their razors yet, but that's possibly coming. I just want to get your thoughts. First of all, have you seen the ad?
Yes, I watched it twice.
Watched it twice. I've watched it once. Matt watched it, I think, 3 times. So between the two of us, we watched it an average of twice. In case anyone doesn't know basic math. But I just want what were your thoughts on the ad, and then I guess the reaction to the ad?
Well, feel like going to be a lot of comments about it, but I loved it. I thought it was a really good ad. I thought it was perfect. And I say that because, one, that is a good message of, I forget what their tagline is, but
the best a man can get.
Yeah, the best a man can get. And I know that I have grown up with men who were taught that being a man meant certain things.
Right.
And I've seen how that's harmed the people around them. I have been in relationships with men who were taught that being a man means being a certain kind of thing. And I've seen how that harms themselves, and it harms like them emotionally. And I know that like that's really easy to make fun of for a lot of people. I can see that perspective, but at the end of the day, I know that there are a lot of people out there who just haven't had that training. I've seen it in my own family, like with close family members, and it's just nice to see that that parenting style, I guess, is in the norm. And it's my hope for like the parents of my generation that they will teach their sons that, it's okay to like have emotions. It's okay to stand up to situations in a certain way. Like you don't have to fight all the time. But I think that's one thing I liked about the commercial was they showed real clips of like men being men. And I remember watching some of those clips. So like they showed the one guy who was breaking up a fight between 2 boys in his neighborhood. There's another guy, another clip of the dad, making his daughter say that she's beautiful, she's smart, all that stuff. You know, so I liked how they brought in the real examples of here's how men do things. And I think as a Black woman, it was especially refreshing to see not only the commercial, but the examples used in the commercial, because those are Black men doing those things. And like, I don't want to play on stereotypes at all. I hate the stereotypes of like men in the Black community, and I do think a lot of them are wrong. But that's not to say there aren't some issues that a lot of us have faced, I guess. And like, okay, so I say that to mean like all the R. Kelly stuff, for example. I know Jameel Hill wrote something for The Atlantic. A friend shared it with me, and she was talking about kind of the culture of silence that exists within the Black community and how it harms girls who have been hurt by things like sexual assault. And again, that's not to say it's everyone, but it's things like that are prevalent enough where like I do see how it hurts women who are victims of things like that. And I see how it hurts men who have bad relationships with people because they were never really taught how to have like healthy emotions and things like that.
Right. So, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, yeah. I feel like I was honestly just rambling at this point.
No. I mean, you made a good point. Because so my reaction to it, when I was seeing, for example, like the dad who stopped his son from beating up the other kid, and you know, when they were all sitting there going, "Boys will be boys," and he like he got off of his grill, and said, you know, "Hey, that's not how we treat people," and that's what my dad would have said, right? Like, so all of the things that I saw in that ad were what I saw. So my reaction to it was, I think, a lot different than yours, or obviously a lot different than yours, because when I saw it, I'm like, that's really how I was raised. So of course that's how it would be. My glasses weren't raised well, of course. But the I don't know why it's like, this is metal. Why is metal bending from nothing? That's another subject we can get into later. But the So seeing that, I was just sort of like, well, yeah, of course. But you're right, and that isn't everyone's experience. I want to touch on the Black thing, as I often do. God, I can't believe I said that.
Like, no words. Anyway.
I would like to touch on what you said and move past what I just said a minute ago. I can't believe it. So I'd like to touch on that. So I think a lot of things when people say like negative things that happen in the Black community at large, I think a lot of those things are negative things that happen in the South, and that then, including Black people in the South, and then got sort of exported outside of the South by Black people during the Great Exodus, or whatever, you know, when Black people started moving into the Midwest and the West and the North. They took a lot of those Southern things, sort of Irish Southern things. I like blaming things on the Irish, by the way. That's a running theme of this show, that most things, if you really boil it down, are more than likely the fault of the Irish. And this is one of them. That, you know, they took these sort of Southern conditioned things and then move them out, because in high school I saw that the prettiest and most developed high school girls, white and Black, were routinely being hit on by men in their late 20s, 30s, 40s, and no one thought it was weird. No one, or I shouldn't say that. Everyone knew it was wrong, but everyone just sort of went, "Oh, you know, she's built like that." And it was like, no, she's 15, she's 14. This guy could easily be her father or grandfather. And it was definitely, I saw it a lot with Black people, but I also saw it with white people. And I mean, I grew up in the South, but I don't believe, in talking to people outside of the South, I don't think it was as prevalent not in the South. But then when I'll hear Black people talk about it, and they'll say, you know, this is something that's very unique to us. And I'm like, I think it's unique to the South, and then you guys took it with you. And again, I have no data to back that up. That's sort of based on personal observation and you know, talking to other people about it. So I maybe I should retool what I think about this a little bit, because my reaction was like, okay, there wasn't anything particularly brave about what was being said. Like, men should be nice to people. Okay, good talk. But if, I don't know how much a razor ad will do for it, but it at least is a good and positive message. There's definitely an aspect of, okay, Nike, is Nike primarily concerned about social justice or the justice reform or Colin Kaepernick's advocacy, or are they primarily concerned with their core demographic and selling more shoes as a result of it, which clearly worked because they made billions from it. And it's probably a combination of the two. And I'm sure Gillette, is faced with men who are increasingly refusing to shave, and women who are shaving and don't want to continue buying pink razors that cost twice as much. Yeah. And that maybe they were reaching out there, but that's interesting that you changed. I think you changed my mind, actually.
Well, there are two things you said that I do want to touch on. One,
am I bashing the Irish?
No. I'm sorry to all Irish people.
I'm not.
But the fact that you said, like your dad, that's something your dad taught you, I think that's awesome. And I see a commercial like that, not saying that all men are bad, but because it used like those real world examples, I think it's kind of showing the people who need to hear that and see those examples that this is how a man acts. So for example, I feel like, if there were like, if there is a chance to mentor young men in your life, your dad's example would kind of be what that Gillette ad was.
Right.
And I will honestly say, like, that boys will be boys thing, like, it does kill me, because in my own family, on my dad's side, my sister and I, we were the only girls for a very long time, and we were the oldest. So there was like a bit of a gap between like kids in the family. And then right after, it was like boy after boy after boy. And like they would do little things. They were just like, I was definitely just about to say they were just being boys, which is bad. But it's like, and so there's
boys will be boys, right? Yeah.
And there's something that I need to work on, because obviously, like, that's no excuse. But like, there were times where they crossed the line, and like my sister and I would like fight back, or we'd tell someone, and it was the same type of like, leave them.
They're boys, yeah.
And it's just like, but like, if they keep on doing that, they're going to get in real trouble, and they're going to hurt real people when they get older. And like, there are also those examples of men in my family who their behavior was excused, and they're terrible. There's a family member. And
I thought you were going to start naming people, like my uncle Steve is a jerk and I hate him. Okay, no, go ahead.
I don't want to go too deep into like specifics, I guess, but like there was a family member where he did have that upbringing of, everything he did, it's just because he was a boy, and that's what boys did. Right. And I remember standing up for myself one time against him, and some of the women in my family pulled me aside, and they were like, "Hey, don't talk to him like that, because you might set him off." And it's like, set him off? Like,
that's a problem. Yeah.
Yeah, and we all outnumber him. So, like, if he does something to me, like, we outnumber him. Like, we can overpower him. Right. Yeah. But also, like, I'm not going to be afraid to be respected as an adult, because you might get upset because people have told you all your life that that's okay. And I remember having some of those same experiences in the church where I grew up. And I remember telling my dad about like some of the messages that like boys had sent me from like youth group and stuff. Mm-hmm. And like, it's funny because like the girls were always held to a very high standard, especially when it came to sexual things. And like the boys were doing all of these things, and like no one ever put them under like the same scope. So it's like, those are I know that people's experiences are different, but those are the personal experiences that I have where I think that, yes, it's time to shatter those stereotypes. It's time to stop thinking that way, and it's time to raise people differently. And I definitely acknowledge that people have already done that, but I think more people need to hear.
That's a good point. My one question is specifically a messaging thing with the idea of toxic masculinity. I know that it's not so. This is sort of so like, okay, so Black Lives Matter, and people go, "Are you saying white lives don't matter? White lives matter too. Everyone's life matters." It's like, okay, the message of Black Lives Matter is saying, yes, everyone's life matters or should matter. We're saying Black Lives Matter, and that they should matter, and we're asserting, and whether you agree with it or not, that for a lot of people Black lives don't matter, and so we're saying they do. We're not saying that white lives don't matter or whatever like that. With toxic masculinity, yes, I realize that they're not saying masculinity is toxic. They're not saying the toxic trait that is masculinity. They're saying toxic aspects, I guess, of masculinity. My question is, so I guess it's more a question of effectiveness. So when besides the fact that people take it as like, are you saying my masculinity is toxic?
Like, no.
Like, no, we're not. But putting that aside, because that's just someone who's not really listening. In my opinion, anyway. Like my glasses are also my glasses are very much an example of toxic masculinity. But with the with and you know what this is like with the glasses, right? You also have to deal with internalized racism from your glasses.
I've definitely had to fix my glasses a bunch of times. So sorry.
So you're enjoying this, right? Right.
Yeah.
So with toxic masculinity, and I was just talking with someone about this, and she was very upset at me. But so how do I word this? So in a way, instead of just calling it toxicity and not saying, "Oh, women do it too. What about toxic femininity?" But like, what's toxic?
Recognize as a thing, by the way. Just saying.
Well, and I'm sure it is, but and I'm not trying to equivocate. Well, women do it too, and trying to do an all lives matter type of thing. But by in a way tying toxic traits to masculinity, instead of just saying these traits are toxic, and the fact that you're a man is no excuse for it. The fact that you're masculine is no excuse for it. This is a bad thing and you shouldn't do it. By actually using a term like toxic masculinity, in a way, to some, besides the fact that some just take it the wrong way, in a way it almost sort of absolves, or it, instead of saying, okay, look, schmuck, just don't do that. I don't care if you're a man, woman, whatever, don't do it. If you add masculinity to it, in a way, it almost undermines the message of cut this out, because it's like, well, you're masculine, so you sort of are naturally inclined to do this, but don't do it anyway. Yeah. Is the message I get. And then there's also the optics of it. And so the example that I gave, which went off really well, and you're about to see why. So for example, taking into an entirely different subject, if we talk about the poverty and violence that is in Black communities and in communities of color, we know all of the reasons for that. We know many of the reasons for that. We know things like institutionalized racism. We know about toxicity that comes as a result of that. We know about lack of access to opportunities. We know about this negative stereotypes about Black people, and in many cases have been internalized, so that there's this popular culture that's like doing the right thing is acting white. We know all of these things, and so there are two different ways we could message that to talk about it. We could say, hey, let's look at the roots of what are causing disproportionately high amounts of violence and poverty in Black communities, and let's address those so that Black people can live safer, more prosperous, and more fulfilling lives. Or we can say, put an end to toxic Blackness.
Okay, that is fair, but I will say, golly, okay, I'm at a big crossroads, only because it's a personal issue that I realize right. I have. I do hate when people say things like, oh, like Black people can joke about this, but what if a white person said it? Because it's just like, I'm not saying you're doing this, but
No. I hope then if that's what you got from that, I was communicating what I was saying entirely wrong.
No, that's not what I got from
Okay.
you, because I know that you're open to things and you're a critical thinker. I'm just saying, in past experience, it's usually people who like just say that and like don't actually want to address the issue. Like
No, that wasn't at all. I was just giving that as an example of how it immediately alienates the people that you're, by instead of saying, hey, instead of empathizing with the person that you're wanting to help to affect change on something that's everyone can acknowledge is a bad thing, it sort of puts them on the defensive and alienates them, I guess is what I was trying to say.
No, yeah, for sure. And I think that that's fair. And like, because you said it, I do get that perspective. And it's funny, like I was literally just talking about this with someone last night on Twitter, because I said Democrat donors being mad at Senator Gillibrand. Maybe it's Gillibrand. It's definitely messing up her last name. I'm so sorry.
I think it is Gillibrand. Actually.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I apologize for that. But I tweeted that like Democrat donors being mad at her for making Al Franken like kind of rectify like his mistakes. I said that was a part of rape culture. And one person responded and they were like, what's the definition of rape culture? Like, that sounds really. So I was explaining that that in that particular instance, ignoring sexual misconduct because you personally agree with someone's politics, like excusing that behavior in someone that you like, while simultaneously calling out that behavior in someone that you don't like, that just like kind of helps, like that helps predators, that does nothing for the victims. So I was explaining it that way.
Right.
And the person said that like maybe a better way to say that, like there were just like different ways semantically to say that. And I could see that point of view. And I will say that people have taken terms like rape culture, toxic masculinity, feminism even, and they've created very negative caricatures of it. And they have swung the pendulum too far.
Or like white privilege is another one that has been turned into by some into like, oh well, you're white, so nothing bad can happen to you because of white privilege or whatever. Right.
For sure. So, and I think it's because people tend to react more negatively to like that intensity. I think that does cancel out some terms, but at the end of the day, I think it would help people who care about those things to message to those people, because there are things that we can agree on. For example, even though just now, like you weren't really feeling the Gillette ad, like there are components of it that we can agree on. And like, I definitely do agree that like kind of some of the messages and social justice issues, like the people who care about them have to recognize that there are people on the other side who would agree with them. It's just the terms, like they've been damaged by people. So I feel like it would benefit people to recognize that those perspectives exist and then try to find ways to meet those people where they are.
Yeah, and that's so like, for example, rape culture or even white privilege, those terms don't really, I don't see those. I could see how someone could potentially get alienated by the term white privilege if they don't take the time to find out what it actually means, just because white is in there. So I think sometimes when you put someone's identity in there, like the exact example, if I were to say toxic blackness, but I meant it to mean, internalized racism and conditioned misogyny and the suffering, reaction to the effects of institutionalized racism and all of these things. But I phrase it in such a way that it makes it sound like, well, you're black, so you're toxic, or you're a toxic type of black. That a similar thing with the masculinity. Rape culture, it's to me is pretty self-explanatory that it is cultural things that either perpetuate rape or make it easier or excuse it away or ignore it or make it tougher for survivors to and victims to, actually say it happened, and then to, explain away, oh, well, that was a long time ago and things like that. And then
she was asking for it because she wore something.
yeah, she asked for it because she was wearing something, or why is she coming out with it now? And it's like, well, maybe because she's seeing how you're treating the ones that are coming out now. So that kind of stuff I get. And even with white privilege, the first time I heard it, my immediate reaction was like, I've had tough things happen to me too. And it's like, and I had to kind of think, I think this person is intelligent enough to know that maybe I should find out what they actually mean. And then actually reading what that meant, that, talking about the fact that my white skin more than likely has never actually been a hindrance to me in a major way. Maybe an individual might not like me, but no one is, people in positions of authority over me are not making negative assumptions about me because of my skin color. If you had to boil it down to a sentence. And I guess similar thing with toxic masculinity, but I guess to me it's like, so I saw that ad and I wasn't actually offended or bothered by anything in the ad. I guess my initial reaction was like, well, yeah, of course. And I guess I was surprised that anyone was reacting strongly one way or the other. I was just like, yes, kids shouldn't beat up other kids, of course. And it was like, why are we still talking about this? Like, yes, of course. I'm glad that we talked about that, because I hearing what you had to say, I think everyone didn't have, the parenting or structuring that I had, and didn't see the same things I did. So, so thank you.
Oh, yes. And I did say I had 2 points on that. So
yes, please.
You said something about basically like they're reaching out, that like, they're just appeasing their base. And first of all, obviously, yes, like it is marketing 101.
Of course, right.
You can't upset your base for real. But
Right.
I think that's a good sign of, because they can run an ad like that, like there is hope for the future, because like that is an idea that more people accept. Like not even just talking about it from like the women's standpoint, but like guys being able to express emotion. Like, you always get like the man up if like a little boy is crying, but like now people are more accepting of the fact that boys are people too, and sometimes they have to cry about things, and that's simple. Like that's simple, but obviously people didn't believe it for a long time. So I think that there are good things that are obviously going to help girls in the future, but I think there are good things that are going to help boys as well. So
yeah, and again, that's, so I wasn't, and I saw kids that were guys that, boys, my friends and stuff, that were told stuff like man up and, boys don't cry or whatever. Like that isn't what I was told. Like, if I was crying about something, if I was, just pouting because I'm a kid pouting, it's one thing. But like if I'm legitimately upset about it, my parents were going to talk to me about it and try to figure out what was going on. I wasn't told, man up and things like that. And, but I did see that. So I think it's just a difference in, I guess my reaction is an example of my being well adjusted or something, that I'm like, well, of course you don't beat up kids. So I had something else here. I think that is everything. So, okay. Was there anything you wanted to talk about?
No, I think we hit on a lot of interesting, unless you want to talk about yourself. I'm totally open to that.
I think I kind of did talk about myself a lot. It's my back, and
Your back.
my back, my neck, my back. I'm in pain. Well, Zuri, it has been so awesome having you on. I'm so glad that we finally got to have you on the show.
Thank you for having me. This is really fun.
And I hope that we can get you on more often. Before I let you go, are there any final thoughts? Anything that you want to share? Anything that you felt like we didn't get to talk about? Any upcoming stuff that you'd like to plug? You would mention a new article, any new articles you want to plug, anything that you want to talk. Zuri Davis, the floor is yours.
Well, no plug as of yet, only because this project, it's going to be like a few months long. So I'd hate to say anything too early because it's
coming out in September. Yeah. Right.
Yeah. A little bit quicker than that, but yeah, kind of far out.
Okay.
But I just think that our conversation was awesome. And even though you and I are definitely like, our political beliefs are essentially the same, like even we had differences. And I think that's just a testament to how important it is to not only respect perspectives, but to search out more than just your own. And I'm like really happy that you shared like your thoughts on different things, especially that ad, because it was so moving to me. And like when I saw people complaining about it, I did just roll my eyes like, okay, here comes like the conservative outrage machine, just like stupid things to be mad at.
Burning my Gillette. Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, like your perspective is legitimate and that is fair. And that's something that I'll take into account now when I talk about those things. So just for all the people listening, don't assume that you know everything, because you don't. And there are literally 7 billion people plus probably on this world, and they all grew up differently and they have different values, and it's more important to try to build bridges than to go on Facebook and have arguments with random people behind a screen. So
absolutely, there are so many different points of view on this beautiful flat earth of ours.
Yes, the flat earth.
The flat earth.
Was it members all around the globe?
Yeah, flat earth members all around the globe. I'm a member of many flat earth groups, and frankly, you know, when you do something, ask yourself, if the turtle looked up from the horizon, would they be happy with what they saw
Jesus.
you doing, guy?
I guess, well, okay, so I do have a final thought. And it has to relate to my tag, and I would just like to put forth the idea that the best people were born in the month of February. One, it's Black History Month, so obviously it is already the best month of the year, but I was born in February, and so was Frederick Douglass, so I think that's a huge testament to the people born in February.
That is a parting thought.
Mm-hmm.
BTFO, all the other 11-monthers.
Oh yeah, no, they're totally irrelevant. They don't matter at all. It's all about the month of February.
To the left. All of you off to the left. So, Zuri, thank you so much again for joining. Stick around with me. I'm going to talk with you during the outro. Guys, thank you so much for joining us on this special Wholesome Sabbath episode, this Shabbat episode of My Fellow Americans. Oh, yeah, because it's Friday. So, yeah, so the writer's block already happened. I normally would tell you to check out the writer's block, but you already checked out the writer's block because this is Friday night.
Shout out to Rebecca Black.
Shout out to Rebecca Black. Oh, the Friday night girl. Yeah, I'm like, who the hell is Rebecca Black? Okay, yes. I'm like, yes, Rebecca Black. Okay, yes, Rebecca Black. Thank you for joining us. And check us out next Tuesday on the Muddied Waters of Freedom, where we will talk about every single thing of importance that happened between the time that we signed off the last time and the time that we're signing on again on Tuesday. But again, thank you for joining us. Shabbat Shalom, everyone, to the millions of Jews watching this and Seventh-day Adventists. And thank you again for joining us on My Fellow Americans. We will see you soon. God bless you.
Put an ease to the minds like mine.
Sometimes darkness is all I find. You know what they say about an eye for an eye in a time when the blind lead the blind. Who am I to deny I would cry when a loved one dies? I recognize that body outside, bullet holes in the body that was alive. Now confined with a chalk outline. Find out how, but you never know why. It ain't even make it to the news at 9. It ain't even make it to the news at 9. That's my sister, mother, father, brother, son. That's one of mine. All these years I close my eyes, open up to only find I'm in line. There's a pointless murder happening all the time. Either lose your